Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and today, as you can see, I'm on the beach. I was going to record a video about Overeaters Anonymous today in my Airbnb, but the neighbours were having building work done. So I'd love to say that I embraced Eckhart Tolle's philosophy and was just accepting of the moment, but no, I felt pretty annoyed. And then I had the inspiration to come to the beach and try and record the video here. And then I had the inspiration to do a completely different kind of video. So what I want to share with you today, I have talked about Eckhart Tolle and his work before on previous videos. And one of the things that people sometimes say to me is they say, I've looked into it and I've listened to it and I find it really hard to grasp. Like, what does it mean when he's saying all these things? And I think if you read one of his books, there's so much in it. And I've read his book several times. And it honestly feels like when I read his book, the majority of the time, I feel like I'm reading it for the first time. So I wanted to share with you these cards that I have. And it's A New Earth, Awakening to Your Life's Purpose, 52 Inspiration Cards by Eckhart Tolle. What I love about these cards is they are just small, bite-sized teachings. Whether it's a couple of sentences, sometimes it's just one sentence. And so it's really digestible. And so I was going through a phase for a long time of regularly pulling a card at random and reading it. And I always seemed to pull the card that I needed, the lesson that I needed for that day. And I've been traveling recently, so I hadn't done it for a few months. And then I pulled a card the other night and it spoke to me so deeply, and it was exactly what I needed to hear. And I'm going to share that card with you in a bit, but I thought it might be fun to try something different and to pull a couple of cards for you, because maybe you'll hear what you need to hear today, and maybe you won't. Maybe it'll just be an interesting, fun video, or maybe this video just won't be for you, and of course that is absolutely fine too. I don't want to turn this into some kind of mystical thing like drawing tarot cards, but sometimes we hear the thing we need to hear at the time we need to hear it. And no one has done that for me more than Eckhart Tolle, or Eckhart Tolle, or Eckhart Tolle, however you want to say it. I say Tolle. How do you say it? Tell me in the comments below. So it's got this fun thing where you can prop it up like this and take a card from the front. So I'm not going to take the top card in case you think I've rigged it. So this is going to be very much off the cuff. I will read the card to you and just share some thoughts. So this is the card. Okay, it's a very short one. Whatever the ego seeks and gets attached to are substitutes for the being that it cannot feel. Okay, I often read these twice because it does take me a second, even after all this time, for the message to sink in. Whatever the ego seeks and gets attached to are substitutes for the being that it cannot feel. So Eckhart Tolle's work is, for me, the way I see it, is about getting out of suffering. We don't want to suffer. So whether you're struggling with binge eating or disordered eating or body image, I think any of this stuff can apply. What I think Eckhart Tolle's teachings ultimately are about is how to get away from suffering. And this idea of attachment, we hear it in Buddhist philosophy as well, that when we become attached to things, we often suffer. So the message, how this comes through when I'm thinking about it from a food and body image point, is that it's the ego that attaches to our bodies looking a certain way. Now, if you're like me, I can feel a bit defensive about that, because I'm thinking no, ego suggests arrogance, or ego suggests always wanting to be better than. And actually ego is just a way of trying to be an individual and seek an identity in a world with so many people, so many different types of people too. And this teaching is saying that the reason why we would become attached to needing our bodies to change, needing to control the way that we eat, is because the ego can't just be, right? The ego is always seeking, it wants to succeed, it wants to strive, it wants recognition. And Eckhart's teachings are all about, actually, when we allow ourselves to just be in the essence of who we are, beyond all the noise, beyond all the social conditioning, that is ultimately where peace lies. So this is not to beat yourself up for having an ego. An ego is not this terrible thing. It is trying to help, and I think approaching the ego with compassion is usually the best way to go. But this idea of being, of just, that itchiness, this is something I've been struggling with. It's quite an apt one for me, actually. This is something I've been struggling with this year a bit. I've found it harder this year than the last couple of years to take time to just be with myself. I find myself seeking distraction and looking for, trying to find some kind of identity through productivity. So I'm feeling very attached to certain outcomes in my life. I have been this year, and that has caused more suffering. So from a practical perspective, what I would be thinking with this teaching is setting an intention to spend a little bit of time being. And that doesn't have to be sitting in silent meditation. That could be walking along the beach if you're lucky enough to live by the beach. It could be having a cup of coffee and just being, right? Being instead of doing. When we can't be, doing becomes a compulsion as opposed to a choice. When we can be, the fear is, if I let myself be, I just won't do anything. And the times when I manage to do it, that's absolutely not the case. When I'm allowed to just be, I then feel inspired to do things, and it comes from a different place. Let's do another card. I'm gonna go with this one. This is a longer one, okay. Buckle up, people. Nothing strengthens the ego more than being right. I can feel the defensiveness in me already. Being right is identification with a mental position, a perspective, an opinion, a judgment, a story. For you to be right, of course, you need someone else to be wrong. And so the ego loves to make wrong in order to be right. Not only a person, but also a situation can be made wrong through complaining and reactivity. Okay. I love feeling right. And it's disconnecting though. Even when we gossip and we talk about other people, and how, this person's doing that, and look at what that person's doing, or look at what that person's wearing. That's all this ego, this desire to be right by making someone else wrong. Because when you're noticing the flaws in others, you're trying to build yourself up, but it's very fragile. Because if you try to build yourself up by noticing faults in other people, the minute you perceive other people to be better than you in some way, you're going to come crashing down. That's the comparison trap. So whether you're feeling superior or inferior, both of those are disconnecting. And both of those come from the ego. Even when you're telling yourself you're not good enough, you might be thinking, well, I'm not building myself up. I think everyone's okay and I'm terrible. Still ego strengthening itself. Because it becomes identification with a mental position, a perspective, an opinion, a judgment, a story. It's really uncomfortable, for me anyway, to approach with this I don't know mindset. It's uncomfortable initially, and actually when I surrender into it and I go into something, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to be. I don't know why that person did what they did. It's actually quite liberating. There's a kind of, for me, this sort of contraction when something's coming from my ego, that when I let it go, it's okay not to know. And it's okay not to be right, because whether I'm right or wrong doesn't say anything about me. It's just the ego. Even if you're someone who's non-diet, like you're embracing this anti-diet lifestyle, but other people around you are still talking about dieting, we can still approach something like that we're trying to use to heal from eating problems in a way that if we become fixated on the people who are not agreeing with us, who are saying the opposite thing, and we're annoyed because they shouldn't talk like that about dieting and they shouldn't talk that way about their bodies, that is trying to make another person wrong in order for you to be able to heal. It's very identified with a certain position of this person being wrong. And it's particularly with family members. Your mum should stop going on about diet, stop talking about her body, or your dad or your friends or whoever it might be. If they could just stop doing that, then you could be okay. It's like you're making them wrong in order to be right. And that's why I don't use the word anti-diet. I don't identify as an anti-diet campaigner. I just want people to be free, and I think for a lot of people that would probably involve not dieting. But I I keep coming back to this place. I keep bringing myself back to this place, that it's okay if someone else finds peace through another way. And it's okay if someone else doesn't find peace, because that's not my job to bring peace to people. It's just to talk about this stuff and offer some other perspectives and ideally get people thinking for themselves. So those are the two cards for you. I'm going to share with you the card for me, which may or may not resonate with you. Gosh, it just resonated so deeply with me. And I think it might resonate with you if you identify as being an overthinker. So if you're one of my fellow overthinkers, listen up. Okay, whatever you learn through psychoanalysis or self-observation is about you. It is not you. It is content, not essence. Going beyond ego is stepping out of content. So whenever I'm observing myself and I see something in myself that I didn't see before, I feel like I've realized something about myself. And I have, but it's content about myself. It doesn't mean, cards are blown all over the place. It doesn't mean that is who I am. And the knowledge and the realization of that is incredibly liberating, and it makes me feel more courageous about approaching the parts of myself that I don't like when I remember that they are not me. They're just things about me. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today. So if you want to get some of these cards, I highly recommend it. Maybe I'll create an affiliate link and pop it below. So if you want to buy some, you could buy it on my affiliate link and help support the channel and my work. But otherwise, you can get them from wherever. But, well, from sunny Bournemouth, signing out, and I will see you on the next video.